So this is a distillery out of Vancouver. This is a Canadian single malt whiskey um, out of Vancouver. I'm assuming it's you know I think it's independent. Actually, this is it's owned by some kind of investment group. Um, but is the Shelter Point Distillery in Vancouver. This is 53% ABV or 109 proof. Um, it is non-chill filtered, natural color. Um, And this is the weird one, the weird kind of odd one, where um, it doesn't say how old it is, but we know that it was aged in barrels smoked um, with Vancouver driftwood. So I actually don't have a good idea what the casking is in here. There was an original edition of the Smoke Point that had 5 years ex bourbon and then was finished in a Lefroy quarter cask. But this version is the one that was aged in California or Vancouver driftwood smoked barrels. Um, so I don't actually know how old this is. I don't know if it's the kind of thing where like the ex bourbon matured it and then um, put it in this driftwood barrels for like a finishing. I'm actually not clear, and it's not clear when I look what the exact idea behind this one is. But either way, it's a single malt whiskey, 53% alcohol. Um, I don't want to read the back. It's a little different. It's an odd puppy. Um, of course, I don't actually have the other offerings from this distillery. It probably would be good to get them, but they are not like, despite the fact that it's a Canadian whiskey, it's not like really any much cheaper than a fucking Scotch. So, and it's all like younger than Scotch. So it's hard to justify getting like a non-age statement random Canadian single malt when it like costs as much as like a 12-year-old Scotch. um, there's all kinds of furs on this thing. Thanks, Adriana. Now that she's okay with it. This is a natural color. 53% alcohol is not barrel strength. It's not barrel proof. And this is a natural coloration. But again, we don't know exactly how old it is, and we don't know how much water really got added here. Some amount, right? Like, I don't know if they would have barreled it at like, I don't know. If we're if we're thinking about like bourbon, maybe they barreled it at like 115, 120, and cut a little bit of water into it. I don't know. No idea. Not much information about that. But this is the natural color of whatever the state of dilution is for 53% alcohol. And if I remember correctly, like, you don't really get that much of a smoke. This one was really salty on the neck pour, but there is like kind of a cigar box kind of tobacco thing going on. I'll give that a minute to rest. And of course, as far as I know, Shelter Point is the only Canadian distillery that's ever been featured in a Scotch Malt Whiskey Society bottling. So they actually, I don't know how many Canadian whiskeys really even exist in Scotch Malt Whiskey Society bottles, but this is one of the few. If there's any others, I don't actually know. If I look real quick. I know they have some rums and stuff, but so this is Scotch Malt Whiskey Society number 152. And it is the only Canadian distillery that they have ever sourced from. So that's an interesting thing. You know, there's something to be said about that. All right. The main predominant note right initially is like the malty character, kind of malt forward. Some orchard fruit characters in the background, fresh cut apple sort of thing. Kind of like down home plate sort of Scotch notes, like bourbon barrel Scotch notes. The aroma does come off salty, like sea spray, um, ocean air. But there's not like a huge smoke component or anything. Um, it's kind of an underlying like honey sort of sweetness. Not a whole lot else there. There's also kind of like a mustiness about it. Um, I don't know if that's like smoky barrel related, but um, it's almost like a dusty book kind of mustiness. Some kind of other thing. What do I call that? There's some kind of like wood note. Um, I don't know what you would call that. It's not oak. Um, there's like a woody note, but it's kind of like it's almost like freshly varnished whitewood or something like that. Some kind of odd note like that. Some kind of like woody note, but it's not like sawdust or oakiness. Um, it's almost like if you were gluing like wood glue, but not just the glue, like if you were gluing whitewood pieces together, like the scent of the whitewood and the glue together, wood glue sort of thing. Now comes some of the tobacco. Actually, just uh, okay. It's developing pretty quickly. Actually, some good layers of notes, either between my acclimation and it opening up. Things are like presenting. Um, yeah, now we're into like that tobacco kind of note, that cigar box kind of note. Hmm. Okay, okay. I'm digging it. Oh, but there's a there's a baking spice in there too, like a cinnamon. Um, it's interesting. These are coming like in waves. Like at first, it was really salty and really malty, and cut Granny Smith apple fruit forward, um, and then it kind of like presented some sweetness, presented some woody notes, um, presented some of that tobacco kind of note, but also like I'm getting again full circle some of that sweetness, but it's also kind of spiced a little bit. Um, and back into some malts. Nose is really surprising me on this. It's actually providing a kind of a mind-boggling amount of different notes and progressions. It was not like this at the neck pour, almost for sure. Sounding better than I remember. Yeah, no, actually, it's kind of crazy. Um, the neck pour in this was like all salt, kind of briny, a little malty, a little orchard fruit. Um, oh, there's a smoke in there too. There's a wood smoke. There's actually, I just got a good hit of like just straight up wood smoke. It's like the smoke is coming now, like a smoked grilled apple. Um, Nose seems insane. I'm not sure what to say. Seems insane. I don't know. uh, I'm kind of flabbergasted because I wasn't expecting that much. But so far, this might be like the best nose I think I've ever gotten um, in a review bottle. It's still like dusty though. There's like a weird dusty book thing in there too though. Like sometimes you get it in you get a good whiff and it's just like almost like you opened an old book that's been sitting in an attic. Um, I can't believe I got that random wood smoke hit in there though. Hold on. Hold on. Hold the phone. This is really something. I don't know what this air did. Um, this is really the aroma is really good. There's a sweet breadiness in there. This glass on this day is insane. That aroma is insane. I'm gonna see what happens here in a minute, but um, that's it's really, it's really strong, and it's just different progressions of notes. Like they're not. It's like there's like a bit of a one after the other, but then also like some old ones pop in, some new ones pop in. it's kind of like you can't expect what you're gonna get, and they're also forming in some weird combinations to make some weird kind of notes, like wood glue and um, like what was the other one I said? Like that cigar box note. Um, and that like random like baking spice thing. It's like just weird though. It's like I had like a sweet honey with baking spice kind of aroma happen like one time. But that's what makes it interesting is because it's like, oh, that's in there somewhere, but you don't like. It's not like you smell it and then you're getting like, oh, this explosion of flavors. It's like you go in and you get, oh, this time it's kind of like this, and then this time, oh, it's kind of like that, and it's like, okay, well, um, okay, we're gonna try it on the palate, if only to just give this a little time to progress. I feel like I could write notes on that nose for a long time. I feel like it's they're the random things coming out of it is like kind of wild, and how they're integrating is kind of wild. On the palate, cheers. So I'm gonna immediately. So I used to say that thing where like if the malt's not smoked, it's hard to get a smoky note, and that these smoked barrels didn't really bring the smoke very well. We're gonna rescind that a little bit. There's a good smoke hit in this one, but it's not got the like peat character that you normally associate with smoky whiskeys, because obviously it's not peat smoked. Um, that being said, like the palate is not like, at least on the outset, doing insane things that the nose is currently doing. Um, there's a little bit of the malty character, a little bit of that fruit character, but there's actually a pretty strong smokiness in the palate, kind of mid palate area. Um, a little bit of like a baking spice note, and then the finish is like not terribly long, maybe like medium minus on the first go, like it's already gone sort of thing. Um, there is like an unsweetened chocolate note kind of in the finish, some like bitter barrel characters. It's kind of briny too, a little bit salty. Um, we'll see if that if if we expand on the palate and finish, but maple bacon thing. Yeah, look, there's a sweet smoky maple bacon thing. Um, and nose seems incredible. It's like you get a little bit of. It's like it just is different every time. See, that one is like a little bit of fruit, a little bit of old dusty book, a little bit of like wood, and this one's like a sweet and smoky, like apple, maple bacon. Um, sort of another weird note. It's kind of like they're melding in such a way that like sometimes it comes out and you're like, what the fuck is that? It doesn't. I don't. I can't put my finger on that aroma, but I know it's kind of different than the other ones. So that one was like all bright apple character. Um, that's wild. It's like this is the kind of nose that every time I rate, every time I rate spirits that have a great aroma, I'm sitting there going, and it just needs a little bit more. It needs a little bit something more. It's not, it's not doing something extra. It's not surprising me. I kind of know what I'm going to get when I go in there. There's plenty of aroma and it's strong and intense and there's a good amount of depth to it, but it's just missing something. It's not going above and beyond. It's not doing the extra. And I feel like this nose is doing the thing that I was pretty sure was possible, but never actually had happen. Where you go in there and you just get some bottomless combination of things between fruit, sweetness, malt, smoke, salt, slightly savory note, random woody notes. They just are kind of just melding in weird ways. Like that dusty note, that kind of like slightly off glue kind of note. Um, there's still malt in there too. Um, it's not like a perfect score, but it's doing the thing. This will be my best aroma score. Um, that is without a doubt. And maybe it's just this class on this day with what I ate today at this fill level at this amount of air in the bottle for this amount of time. Maybe it'll get worse, but there's like a bready, sweet bready cracker thing. What do you call that? Graham cracker, digestive cookie, something like that. Last time you were saying the smoke was missing for a bottle called Smoke Point. Yeah, it's in there. Oh yeah, it's in there. Um, it needed air in it or something. This doesn't feel like the same whiskey. I don't know what I don't know what to tell you. That neck pour was a really bad representation of what this whiskey is. And maybe this is the best possible representation of what this whiskey is, and maybe it gets worse. But it's so interesting. And it's not over dominantly smoky. It's a smoke component. I'm getting some weird apple juice thing on the finish right now. uh, I I'm flabbergasted a little bit. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't expect to give this a good score. I expected to give it like a middle of the road score. Um, huh. I'm being challenged a little bit. What does this say on here? This says something about an award. 2022 Best Single Malt Canadian Whiskey. Canadian Whiskey Awards. 2022 Francisco World Spirits Competition Double Gold. I don't know if those are sponsored awards or not, or actually awards. Sometimes awards are sponsored. I don't know if San Francisco World Spirits is one of the ones that we don't like. I can't remember. Usually most of them we don't like. We're going to try to pick apart this palette a little bit because it feels like there's actually not that much on the palate. Flavor's good, flavor's strong, doesn't come across young. Um, Not like a kind of a faint orchard fruit, faint malt character. Then becomes wood smoky, um, salty, baking spice note, and then goes into a pretty bitter finish, but with some sweetness, some maltiness in there, some vague fruit character in there. Um, Definitely salty on the finish, briny, sea spray. Um, I'm not getting as much of the like tobacco sort of note I remember from this. I got it on the nose a little bit, but the palate doesn't have that like sort of tobacco cigar box kind of note that I remember. Um, so I'll give it like one or more sips here, one or two more, and then we'll write some numbers. But um, aroma is insane. Palate and finish are okay. Um, Finish goes slight baking spice, unsweetened chocolate, barrely bitter, salty, um, a little bit of that fruity note. Maybe slight smoke character. Mostly bit bitter. We're gonna call finish length like medium. It's probably like fair. It's not super long. Um, what am I gonna do with this nose, man? I feel like I just got a marshmallow. I feel like. Um, oh, that's hard. uh, I'm not giving it a perfect score. I can imagine a better one. If I can imagine a better one, then it's not a perfect score. Um, the question is, can I? How many better? How many magnitudes better can I even imagine? Like, is it like a 23? I'm gonna give it a 22. 22 out of 25. It's the driftwood barrel, man. I bet you like their 12-year single malt is probably not nearly as interesting aromatically. It needs that weird driftwood barrel. It's hitting right now. It's hitting today. So palate is like on attack, slight malty note, slight appley kind of note, um, bed of like honey sweetness. Comes in kind of like a smoky character, like we'll give it like a lingering wood smoke character. Then goes into like a bitter wood note, a bitter baking spice kind of note. That's kind of like where we're at, like before the finish. Um, it's not giving me anything too wild though. It's not giving me the thing where like I take a sip and then random like almost like what you get out of the nose where like you go in and you're like surprised at what kind of different combinations or aromas you get out of it. It's not doing that thing on the palate. Instead, it's kind of just mostly that malty orchard fruit, that smoky um, baking spice, some sweetness, some salty brine. Um, my palate's like pretty good though. Still, it's probably like 18. Um, it doesn't have like the kind of like grassy, earthy, um, iodine medicinal peat notes that you get normally from like a smoked scotch, but it kind of replaces those with kind of like sort of regular old bourbon barrel kind of notes. Kind of rounds it out in that way. Ooh, God. All right, let's focus on the finish. Finish starts off with some baking spice, some like bitter barrel, some like unsweetened chocolate, kind of a briny layer in there. Lingers into like um, smoky, smoked apple kind of flavor. Kind of like an apple juice thing, but there's also a smoky, salty component. Not super long. Um, Still pretty good though. I mean, I gotta be honest, it's still pretty good. I'm gonna give the finish 18. I don't know what to say, really. This whiskey is surprising me. Let's talk about texture. Um, Pretty reasonable. The attack is like not the best though. It's not. Maybe if this is a barrel proof, it would be like even better. But there is a slight right at the entry where it kind of feels like it's not quite there. Um, it's like fine. Mouth feels like fine. Um, we'll get 5 on texture. Now let's talk about my overall experience with this whiskey. Um, so I'm gonna not take into consideration the fact that the neck pour was like hot trash compared to this. Um, we're gonna talk about my experience with this dram today in the glass. Um, the aroma seems insane. There's all kinds of vast, different possible combinations and permutations of notes that you get out of this nose, and it changes almost every time you go in. It's immensely satisfying in that way. Um, Nothing is coming like completely out of left field. It's all things that you kind of expect. It's the orchard fruit. It's the malt. It's the salt. It's the smoke. It's the little bit of baking spice. It's the little bit of wood. Um, all kind of like playing and teasing around in different ways. There's like the honey in there too. Sometimes there are brief hints of like a tobacco. Um, all these sorts of notes are also like recombining to create slightly different aromas every time. This particular glass on this day, the aroma is very strong. That being said, there's nothing crazy going on with the palate. There's nothing crazy going on with the finish. It kind of has all of the kind of notes you kind of expect. Just those notes up front, the fruit, the malt, the smoke, the salt, some barrel in there. Um, so nothing wowing me on the palate and finish, but they're still pretty tasty. It's actually quite approachable to drink at this proof. There's no sharp edges. Doesn't feel young despite being a non-age statement. Um, it's not wild, but it is a 10 out of 15 standout whiskey. I gotta say, maybe 11. We said 10. We'll give it 10. Because just how You know, the palate and finish are not dissatisfying. They're not terrible. They don't keep up the standard that you get on the aroma, but it's still tasty, still excellent. Um, Still surprised by this whiskey today. Um, all being said, this is a 73. A 73. 73 out of 100. It's a great whiskey. It is a great, great whiskey. Wow. We got through that.